I'm sorry that we had to postpone a week because of the coup. It gave me some time to really work on my Zoom background, which I think is looking pretty fantastic. And and I took a shower. So anyway, haven't done this before, but I thought we would start with some sound because that's why we're here. This is a short clip from a story I made a few years ago. We had a couple brutal winters in Vermont in a row. And it was, I think, March, so it was getting to be that kind of brutal time of winter when it's been going on for a really long time. And I was seasonally pretty depressed, and I just kind of thought I got to get out of my house and with a microphone and just go talk to people. And, for a lot of people in Vermont and in other places too, we spend cold places. We spend, months of the year living within about 10 or 15 feet of our wood stoves. And you're literally kind of just like spinning around in front of your wood stove, and everybody's backed up against it, and you're kind of jockeying for a spot by it, and which is kind of amazing. And everybody's got their thing about how they deal with their wood stove. So I just went out and talked to people in my town about their wood stoves and about just the relentlessness of winter. And this is just a little bit from that story. So Bob, if you want to hit play.
I don't know. I kind of keep a little bit of kindling wood on hand because at nights I just live in a house trailer, so I don't need it really that hot. So now I've got dry wood. I'm on top of it now instead of the green wood. I don't like that. It's just don't warm up enough. And I work outside all winter, so I get home, I want it to be about Florida weather, 80, 90. Then I'll turn the stove down a little bit after I get thawed out. But
this is the way it used to be when I was a kid. It used to be cold like this. Up into April, you'd be sugaring into the middle of April at some points, and it looks like they're going to be this year if it ever gets started. I used to sugar, but I'm not this year because I don't have the wood for the sugar house and too much snow to waddle through. And
well, right now we put it in a bucket on a tractor, and our bucket holds probably almost a run. We bring it in and we stick it right into the garage door, and so we don't have to walk so far. Bring it in, dump it on the ground, pick it up again. You know how many sticks of wood? Tell me you handle a stick of wood. How many times you have to handle that? All kinds of times. 1, 2, 3, 5, 7 or 8 times. You got it all worn out. Time you get it to the stove, there's no wood left. It is. You have. Then you got to take the ashes out, and that's where you go crazy. That's why you're crazy.
By at least Friday, anyways. It's supposed to get up into the high 40s, so. And then it looks like it's supposed to stay like that, so I guess we'll see. I hope the snow goes. I've had enough of it. I'm running out of places to push it.
Here comes the sun, do do do. Here comes the sun.
So that's just a little piece from Wood Stove. When I started this show, I don't even know when I started it. I don't know what year. I know it was before the first serial. So that's a long time ago. But I didn't know what it was about. I didn't have an audience for years, which was great because I had time to play and to figure it out. And this was back when podcasts were all independent. They were all made by, people in their living rooms. And, they were kind of media misfits. They were all made from love and curiosity and, or neurosis. And so everybody was playing with the format of audio and what we wanted to make. There were no gatekeepers. There's no radio gatekeeper who's saying, or program director who says this is good and this is bad, or this is interesting and this is not. There are no FCC guidelines, so you can do whatever you want, and you can have it be a minute long or 3 hours long. So it was a really kind of thrilling time in audio. And I think it has changed what we hear on the radio now, because it's pushed radio. It's pushed because now so many people are listening. People on the radio expect to be more surprised than they were before the age of podcasting. I think they expect to hear formats played with. But anyway, after a long time of doing this and nobody listening, I think that what I figured out was that I wanted to make shows about the important things that happen between the newsworthy things. Nothing that I make really is going to be in the news, but these are the things, the fears and the confusions and the loves and the setbacks, and these are important things between the important things. And I think that's what I wanted to make a show about. And I think selfishly, I've always believed that everybody I meet knows something that if I knew it, I would do my life better, or knows how to do something, or has a way of approaching life in a particular way, or got through something in a particular way. And if I could get it, then I would know how to do my life better. So it's basically selfish. I mean, it's basically selfish. It's basically it's personal. But it's funny. I was thinking that I hate the fact that I think that this show, I don't know what you call it, but I think oftentimes if you put it in a regular mediascape, you'd call it human interest stories. And I don't know why that bothers me so much, but it does. These are personal stories, but in a way, personal stories are newsworthy. If you think about newsworthy stories, right? So an example, my mom she's a really intelligent, engaged person, but she's driving to the hardware store for light bulbs or something, and she hears on the radio a story about, the mental health care system. And it sounds like things are pretty dire, but she really is also thinking about the light bulbs. And it's pretty complex. It's clearly a systemic problem. And she gets some of it, but she cares, but she doesn't care that much. And she doesn't care tomorrow, probably. And I think that because she doesn't know who the mental health care system is. So I've used that as an example because a few years ago, I made a series for Vermont Public Radio called They Are Us. And it started because I made a story about people who are being essentially warehoused in hospitals, emergency rooms, because there's nowhere for them to go, and for all kinds of nested, complicated reasons. And so I thought if I could make a series that's not about the news, leave the news to the news, but make a story about who is the mental health care system? Who are the people who are getting the services? How do their days go? What about a mother of somebody who's living with schizophrenia? What's that like day to day? What about those, very underpaid people working at Washington County Mental Health with, spider plants in their offices? What are they doing every day as part of this system? That if my mom could meet the people, then the next time she heard the stories from the news, she would know, oh, these are my people. These are my neighbors. I know who that is. So I think that, God, I feel like I'm talking really plaintively. Okay, I'll just keep going. Anyway, I think that documentary or the kinds of stories, hopefully, that I'm trying to make complement the news. So that's something I guess I'm realizing that I try to do. I make stories about Vermont because Vermont is where I live. And I really want to hear where I live on the radio or on, on the airwaves. So that's part of it. At the same time, if I lived in, Utah, I'd be making shows about Utah. But I was born and raised here, and I really have a very strong love-hate relation. I hate Vermont, and I also love Vermont, and I would like to represent all of that in its sort of messy complexity in sound. I want to make something that sounds like where I live. So that's important to me. I don't know. It seems important to say, I know that podcasting, as I said before, it comes from this tribe of people who were making things initially that were just idiosyncratic by nature because they were making something that came out of their own brain, right? And you can make all kinds of mistakes if you're alone making something, but that's part of what makes them very singular and beautiful. And what's interesting about this show, I call out to, the Hub and Spoke is a collective that I am part of independent podcasts. Podcast now sort of means anything. It's a terrible word too. The word podcast I wish we had figured out something better along the way, but a lot of podcasts now are, made by teams of people, and it's just, those are different animals somehow. I think that especially with independent podcasts, the audience comes to feel close to the person who's making it. And I feel close to the people who listen. It feels like a relationship develops that is intimate. And in a way, it feels like they have some sense that they're on for a long ride, and that has to do with our relationship in addition to just the show. Like, I wonder why that was a terrible show. I wonder why she made that. It's part of a whole landscape of, it's my own trajectory. And so hopefully, not everybody, but hopefully there are some people out there who just are interested in what that looks like. And then we're going along together. And that's really, they're choosing to listen in a way. With radio is a little bit more passive. You turn it on and it's on, or it's not. But with podcasting, you hit play and you listen, you come to it. I think the one thing I worry about, because I make this show alone, is that I do slip into tropes that I can't check myself in terms of my own habits. Am I slipping into, she always does that, or that's this thing that she does. I'm always trying to hear if I'm getting lazy or something, and it's not always easy to know because I don't have an editor. I don't have a team. That said, I do feel like, again, with this audience, I feel like my audience will let me know. I think that they'll let me know if I get lazy. Actually, so when the pandemic first started, I didn't know what to do because I do all my own interviews in person usually. And it wasn't clear. None of us knew what we were able to do. And really as a lark, because I just asked listeners to send tape from wherever they were. Because there was that short period of time when everybody was on lockdown all over the world. It was really just like a couple months or something when everybody was facing the same thing at the same time. And then we all kind of split into our different schedules. But anyway, in that little time, I sent out a missive to listeners asking if they would send tape about any kind of tape. Well, what are you doing? What are you listening to? What are you worried about? And usually people do not respond to stuff like that. I really did not expect that it would work. I said, this is an experiment. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't, but let's try to make a show together. And if you send tape, I'll try to make something with it. And I couldn't believe what I got. I couldn't. And what's so beautiful and ironic to me a little bit about this Atlantic thing, which was very, whatever. It's very nice that happened, but it was not for anything that, it was not about anything that I had, what is the word when you bring out something? I had not called forth this genius that came to me. This was all them. And I loved that was recognized, that it was a deep collaboration between me and the listeners. And I could not have dreamt up the genius that came my way. And I also can't imagine, it was the most wonderful solace in those couple months to spend time with these people. It was just remarkable to have them with me. I would sit over at my desk for 14 hours just listening to people in Barcelona and people in Tasmania and people, drunk people in Tasmania. And it was remarkable. So anyway, I do think I have the best audience of any podcast. I think I can say that with confidence now, that my audience, or that people who listen to the show, are really the best people. Anyway, that's not, I don't think that that's bragging about me. I'm saying that these people that have collected are remarkable people. Anyway, so I thought I would play just a short cut from our show. This is just it's 4 minutes long, so it's a little bit longer, and it just will give you some sense of how that went. So Bob, whenever you're ready.
But right now, we're not supposed to go anywhere.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Because of the virus. The city is on lockdown.
It is, eh?
For 12 more weeks.
Oh. You haven't been exposed, have you?
Not as far as I know.
Yeah. Is it all over the country?
It's all over the world.
Oh. How many have died?
I lost track. Does it frighten you?
No, doesn't bother me much at all. But I'm not going to ride the bus.
Cleo is a little girl that lives around the corner. And she and her family have been away. And for one day, Liv got to hang out with Cleo. And after that, they've been shut inside their house. So she's really sad about it.
Cleo home. Cleo home. No, Cleo home.
Are you there?
Yeah.
We're getting to be pros at this.
Yeah, right. What are we doing with this?
I don't know, but when I got you this microphone, I never foresaw that we would both be basically stuck in our houses running away from coronavirus.
I know, it's scary as hell.
Given that you're not going to the funeral, you're not going to Benji's, what was your logic behind going to get your nails done?
Oh, that was before I got smart. I have another appointment in 2 weeks, and if things are bad, I'll just cancel.
Okay. I highly doubt things are going to be much different in 2 weeks.
So I won't go, but I'm going to go stir crazy by then.
Yeah, I already am. I'm only 3 days in. Wait, was that a dry cough right there? Are you sure you're okay?
I cough all the time.
What do you mean? How do you know that's not a cough? How do you know that's not a
Because it's what I always
cough?
have. I cough up. I don't have the cilia, in to bring up mucus and stuff. See, I have that, and I'm clear.
This is a duet.
Oh, Siri, do you ever miss your mother?
I don't have an answer for that. Is there something else I can help with?
Oh, Siri, can you feel your heart?
I don't have an answer for that. Is there something else I can help with?
Do you ever fear your own death?
I don't have an answer for that. Is there something else I can help with?
Oh,
Artificial intelligence fails me again.
There aren't any major revolutions going on or uprisings. The world is fairly serene, depending on where you live.
Have you heard much about what's happening beyond here?
I haven't heard a great deal, no. I guess I haven't been paying attention.
So anyway, that is a small piece from that series, our show. I just love them. I love them. And anyway, it was really, really fun to play with the thing is, there's nothing important in anything that they were saying, right? But there was such a deep humanity in and also in knowing the context and knowing we all lived through that time. And I guess my hope is that we were all there. And my hope is that that series sounds like that time. And it's not that it's explicit. We're not talking always explicitly about the pandemic, but it's all in the sound of voices too, right? It's in what people say, but it's also in what people don't say. So anyway, so I will talk just briefly more, and then maybe you can ask questions. But basically, the making of this show is about interviewing people and then editing. Usually, that's what it is. And I've never set up an interview and not hoped that it would get canceled, because I get really nervous before interviews. So I'm always sort of hoping, like, oh, it's not going to work out. But I think I get nervous because it matters, because I'm going to, enter into somebody's life and ask fairly personal questions. And I don't know the biggest thing is I don't know what's going to happen. Like I don't know what will happen. We are going to, come together, and there are two things that are happening in any conversation, right? There's a content, right? There's a question and an answer, and that's content. But then there's also dynamic, which is in any two people, right? Especially if you meet somebody at a party and you're talking with them, and you're animals, you're relating, like, who is this person? What do they mean? Do I like them? What are we doing? All of the dynamic is as audible as the content, and the dynamic is as interesting as the content. So I'm aware of both of these things in an interview. And the dynamic is not just about the dynamic between us. In a way, it's like we're moving to some third place together, and that's going to change the tone of that person's voice, right? Hopefully we're going to get to some place where the penny drops down a little bit, and they're talking as much to themselves as they're talking to me. I like the idea that if I get to a place in an interview where we're both saying, I don't know, I feel like I've achieved something, right? If somebody gets to a place where they don't know the answer, that's usually a good sign. Or if I don't have a next question, that's another good sign, where we can be silent together, where being silent is awkward. So it's not something that happens right away, but eventually, if there's silence, you're just, it's loud and it's interesting. And very often after silence, something interesting happens. So if you get to the place in a conversation where you can allow for silence because they trust you enough, I wouldn't do that to somebody initially, but then they can just think and then follow up their own thought instead of waiting for my cue. Interestingly, and this is sort of maybe politically incorrect, or I don't know what it is, but one thing that I've been thoughtful about lately is my age, that I wonder how the dynamic between me and the people I interview is changing as I get older. Will it be, I think about like, will I be interviewing people when I'm 72? And what will that be like? Will it be different? What are people's assumptions about a person because of their age, right? Are there barriers that present themselves? Because right now I feel very neutral. I feel extremely blank, or I feel like I can be blank. And I wonder if that changes. That's just something that I'm thoughtful about. And the last thing I'll just talk about is just editing, which is awful. It's an awful, awful process that is necessary, but it's awful. And I would say it's about 80% confusion and certainty that this time I will not figure this out. And then it's about 20% realization of, oh, this is what this is. So I would say that that's the pie chart. And I might just be a negative person, but I think a lot of people that you talk to who make things would say the same thing, that it's like writing. It's terrible. It's a terrible, you want to clean the bathroom. Like there's a lot of bathroom cleaning in place of editing. And I don't usually have a plan when I go into it. I try to sort of follow the tape. Like, what is this? Is this something where I'm in it and I'm asking questions, or is this something where I'm not in it and I'm sort of letting them be alone or them, maybe it's more than one person. What is the format it takes? Do I have enough? Do I need to go back for different kind of tape? So I'm following what I'm hearing when I'm logging the tape. And, ultimately I'm trying to make something that is going to have that. I want to recreate the love that I feel for the person that I talk to. And the thing is that the love is not in the raw tape. You hear it and it's wicked boring because it's long. And it's not what happened to me when I was with them. When I hear the raw tape, it's like 2 hours or whatever. That experience of listening to the raw tape has no resemblance to what my experience sitting in the room with that person was. They're totally separate things. So in a way, what I'm trying to get back to is, by sculpting the tape, is get back to the experience that I had with that person in the room. So I'm making what was true, but it means making something radically different from what I have in my computer. So anyway, I'm trying to make shows that I don't know. I don't know how much difference any of this makes. I do think that the goal is to get people to climb into other people's lives, and to sit in the front seat with somebody, and you have enough connective tissue from another human that you say, oh, I understand. I see how you got there, right? And I think there's something inherently valuable about that. It's not, not solving, the climate crisis, but I think that there's value in it. And I think ultimately it has, it's love. It's the show is about that, it's about love on some fundamental level. And hopefully entertainment. It has to be, it also needs to be entertaining. Entertainment is very important. So that's what I have to say. And I thought maybe if people wanted to, how am I doing for time? Am I okay? Like, should we do questions now? Okay. So, yeah.
Okay. There's, you'll have to look at the chat. There's a lot of nice comments. But one question is, what got you started in this process?
Well, I'll tell you, the most honest answer to that is that my son was getting to an age where I was working as a private investigator when I started doing radio. I was making a radio show very periodically, and then trying to find somebody to play the radio story. And so when podcasting came up, and I realized, I can do this, myself. And but I did it mostly because I didn't want my son to see me disappointed. That I remember vividly that was a big reason I did it. Was that I knew that I was not. Like, private investigation is really interesting. It's very similar in certain ways. You have an excuse, a reason to knock at that door at the end of the road. And I loved doing that, but it was not mine. My job was to fill a bucket and give it to a lawyer to build a case with. So there was inherently something disappointing about that. And I knew, I used to work in television, but television requires lots of people and lots of money to produce. With audio, you could do it by yourself. And when podcasting came around, I really had no excuse not to do it. And I really, really wanted to make sure that my kid saw me struggling and afraid and failing and succeeding and doing something that mattered a lot to me. And that was what kicked the can down the road for me. Yeah.
Good. Next question. How has your interviewing experience changed during the pandemic? Is it harder to develop intimacy and trust?
Yes, it is. And it's hard right now. It's really, things in Vermont are getting bad. And so it's harder and harder to do interviews in person. I've set up, I've done a lot of car-to-car interviews with a long boom mic, which looks like a drug deal. It's really ridiculous. But I've parked close to other cars with my boom mic over, reaching out to them. But the problem is that it's fine, but you can't, what you are doing is guarding yourself against another person. That's what we're all doing, right? And so there is a bump to that. I did do an interview recently with that gentleman, Daniel Kirk, who lives in New Jersey, who had COVID. And that was all over the phone. And he was wonderful. And it went great. And maybe I need to sort of get my panties out of a bunch and climb in and start doing more phone interviews. But I don't like them as much. The sound isn't as warm. And I like being in a room with somebody. But yes, it's hard. It's hard now. I don't know what I'm going to do in the next. I'm sort of thought today maybe I'll just start interviewing dairy farmers in their barns, because barns are great in that they're warm and they're cozy, and you can be there without masks on at some distance because you're sort of outside. So I was thinking maybe I'll just do that for a while.
Well, that sort of leads to this question. How do you find your subjects? Are they first topics or people? Do you have multiple ones percolating?
Yeah, very often have several going at a given time. There have been all manner of ways that they occur to me. Interesting people tell me about somebody. There are just a lot of interesting people in the world. And also there are things that I am worried about or thinking about in my own life that I want to sort out. And then I make a show that relates to it. So I made a show about aging. I made a show about, Donald Trump getting elected, sort of. That was the impetus for making the show. So whatever's working on me, I will find ways to make shows about if I can. And then some shows are, so those are the two major ways, is just subjects I want to know more about, and then people that I know I want to talk to.
Another question, are you interested in exploring dynamically how people got to wherever they are in our current political environment?
That's interesting, because in the beginning, I remember there was this big flood of when Trump got elected. There was this big kind of navel gazing in the mediascape about like, how do we not see this coming? And, what's our responsibility? And also what don't we know about these people and stuff? And it was very kind of, I don't know. I wasn't interested in it for some reason. And, here's part of it is that I can't make something that feels like, I can't make something where I am and the listeners are looking at somebody instead of joining them. And there was something about the beliefs. I mean, I'm now just talking about, our very fragmented political landscape, but I couldn't, there was so much, there were so many conspiracy theories that I couldn't unwind and wasn't interested in unwinding with somebody, that I could not see a way to get to a show where we were joining with the person. And I didn't want to objectify people. So I haven't figured that out yet. I haven't figured out how to take that on directly. It kind of answers the question, not entirely. I mean, I feel like all kinds of people that I talk with all the time come from all different kinds of backgrounds and probably lots of different political points of view, but it's not my first interest in when I'm talking to people. Sort of an answer.
This question started with, I really love that you talk about your nervousness before every interview. I'd love to hear a bit about how you navigate that trepidation and what kind of energy you try to bring into each interview.
Well, when I go to somebody's house, which is, I usually interview people where they are, office, barn, front porch, kitchen table, wherever. My job is, I'm holding the mic. So I'm in charge of, I am responsible for helping somebody feel comfortable. That's my job. So it's an acting job initially because I'm really nervous, but my job is to help somebody arrive into a level of comfort. So that's all that I'm focused on initially, right? Is demystifying the object of a microphone, and getting somebody comfortable with the fact that there's one in their face. And also I can see when the lights flick on and somebody recognizes that I'm very interested in what they're saying, right? So initially it's a lot of very softball type of interactions where you're just getting somebody warmed up and comfortable in themselves standing in front of a microphone.
So how do you prepare for interviewing all the different kinds of people you interview?
I usually, it's different for different kinds of interviews, but I spend a lot of time coming up with questions, but imagining their lives, or imagining so that I can imagine my way into, well, if this is true, I wonder what about that? And if that's true, what about this? So just trying to warm up by imagining them. And then I do sometimes have a long list of questions that I might take with me, but I don't pull out. And I might pull it out eventually. And it can be very upfront. Like, I really wanted to make sure that there were certain things I asked you. And so I have this list and I'm going to look down at it now, so I don't feel concerned about consulting a list, but I don't use that initially.
Okay. Did you ever have a regret about a particular show? And if that happened, how did you deal with it?
That's a really, really interesting question. What I never have had happen that maybe I've blocked it out, but I don't think I've ever had a situation where the person or people that I interviewed felt misrepresented. That's obviously hugely important to me. And if ever there's a question about either something somebody told me that I wonder if they're going to be sensitive about, I will always consult them before I include it. And that's obviously not what reporters do, but whatever. I'm not interested. I want to make sure that they are represented which doesn't mean that everybody's beautiful. I mean, they're very naughty, interesting, dark, and there's all kinds of aspects of a person. But if there's information that they may be sensitive about, I will consult them first. By the end of the project, the idea is that it belongs to both of us, that it's mine and it's theirs. I can't remember what the question was. Oh, did I have a regret?
Right. Yeah.
I remember interviewing my friend Michael Chorney, who's a musician in Lincoln, Vermont, an amazing man. And I remember feeling regret that I hadn't, because it was a very intimate conversation, and I think I remember feeling regret that I hadn't sent it to him before airing it. Because he was struck by it. And oftentimes with people, they just need time to listen to it a couple times, and also to get feedback from other people to feel a little bit like they can settle into it. And I wish I'd given him more time. I remember thinking that. But no, I don't feel like, off the top of my head, I don't feel like there's, again, my big issue would be is if I failed somebody, if I made something that did not feel true. And I don't think I feel that I don't think of anything that I feel like I've been untrue to people who I've interviewed. I mean, I've made a lot of shows that are too long, and I've gotten better at that, but you get better.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Well, it's interesting you talk about the length of your podcast. This next question says, what do you do with all of your hours and hours of tape? Do you ever revisit, say in a month or a year or a decade later, or do you plan to?
Wow. I mean, I have it all carefully stored, but no, I don't. It's hard because you're cutting babies. Like, that's what you're doing. That's what editing is you're cutting out. There's 80% of the tape you do not use. And that's always it's horrible. But it is also, again, the goal is to make the thing that is going to actually best resemble what happened in the room, right? And that actually means that 80% of the stuff generally has to go away. So it's a source of pain. Like, I don't want to remember that amazing moment that I did not use. So I don't generally, and also when you finish a show, you are so, it's cathartic, but it's exhausting, and you feel like you've done this thing. And so you're generally ready to take a break from it after that. So I don't know what I'm going to do. I'll probably I don't know what I'm going to do with all the tape. I don't know.
This person said, you've helped me relax and have comforted me so many times. How do you unwind?
Huh. That's really nice. I like to go biking, and I like to make quilts. But I don't think that I have a very good answer to that. I don't know. I mean, I'm not very good at, I'm not very good at, I feel like the actually working is the most, is when I feel the most alive and the most engaged. I mean, I have an amazing kid, so that's who I love to talk to and argue with and cook for. So there's that. He's going to be going away to college in a couple of years, and I don't know what I do then. But working is when I feel the most awake.
Nice. How did you come up with the name Rumble Strip?
I didn't. I'm not good at naming things. Stacy Peters, who is the partner of my son's father came up with the name. She's also the person who designed the website. So she's smart. She's smarter than I am, and she named it. So, but it's a great name. I mean, I love the name, but I didn't come up with it.
It is a great name. How did you come up with, no, I asked you that question. How did you come up with the idea of the problems episodes? Love them.
Well, I'm glad that you love them because you are one of the rare few who love them. Problems came up because a friend of mine, my friend Mike, and I were talking one day, and we noticed, we're both, very comfortable white people living in central Vermont. And we were both complaining about really stupid things in this conversation. He was having a renovation done on his house, and he was like, it's just really hard because, we can't use the downstairs bathroom. And he's like, can you believe I just said that? And that's where Problems was born, is that, middle-class white people complaining about their problems. There are just so many things to complain about. And, so that's where the show was born. And some people hate the show because they're horrible people. But I love Pam, and I love Joel, who is, so yeah. But most people don't like that show. They think it's horrible. But this is the great thing about podcasting is I get to keep doing it anyway, because why not? A few people out there like it.
I was going to say a few people have commented here in the chat that they like it.
That's great. This is the This is the A team.
This is a great audience. Have you ever did you get your sisters to do the holiday podcast? Such a riot and so true.
Those were not my sisters. My sister's really nice and really not like any one of those sisters in the show. No, that was Sarah Miller, who is a writer in Northern California, who has been on this show. And I've done there was a show about lentils and cooking, and also the bison selfies. She runs through Rumble Strip. And also Amelia Meath, who I've interviewed several times, who is a musician in a band called Sylvanesso. Those were, and it was Amelia's idea. The show was Amelia's idea. So we came up with our own characters who all were horrible in their own really special ways. And quite frankly, all kind of awful in ways that were easy for us to access.
It says, what have you come to understand about Vermont?
When I think that, compared to the Vermont that I grew up in, or that I grew up on knowing, I think that when I started being a PI, I was introduced to a whole part of Vermont that I just hadn't been aware of. I mean, you are all together in public school, and I went to a K-8 school, so that was my biggest exposure to all of my town. But then after that, the world just gets parsed and parsed and parsed, and there's a Venn diagram where things, some communities don't touch each other, and oftentimes, or at least it used to be, that the public radio version of Vermont, I don't think this is so true anymore, but the public radio version of Vermont used to feel very covered bridgeified, right? And that has gone away in my my view of the place. But what I do have a strong attachment to is and what I think I've learned in the course of making the show is just the importance of town in this state, that there is a civility in being from a place that matters, that is its own small entity in the larger. I mean, town meeting culture really, I believe really still means something here. And there's a kind of truth about, do not screw with me, but please pull me out of the ditch if you drive by and I need a lift, right? So I think both of those things are operative here. And I love that about this place. And I feel like I've gotten closer and closer to that just in the number of people I've met across the state.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think we have time for 2 more questions. Would you do more drama if you had the resources?
Drama, like problems? I mean, I guess that's the only drama I've done. Is that what that? I mean, sure. I've always wanted to make a musical. I tried to make a musical with Scott Carrier a few years back, but he refused to sing, which was problematic because that was the point. I mean, it was a great interview. I really liked the interview that we used, but then I had to sing all the songs. So it was kind of weird. I would like to make a musical. I have a friend who's a listener in Tasmania who I would love to make something. He's actually the guy who starts the Our Show series singing an Elvis song, and he's wicked drunk. That's the guy that I would really like to hear more from, and maybe drama or something. I don't know what the format would be yet.
So this question is, what will you do next? Will Rumble Strip just go on forever?
That is a really good question. I worry, what happens if when do you get off the boat? When is it like, okay, we've heard that's enough. Like I worry about that sometimes, that will I know when it's time to stop? And I don't know how I'll know that. I mean, I guess I know I can cue myself that I'm either interested or not, but I worry that I'll get boring, or that people will be like, we've heard enough from her and that. So I don't know. I mean, Rumble Strip, it feels like it comes out of my own life. It's what I do to sort it out. And so it feels very natural to keep doing it because I keep getting older, and that I keep learning new stuff and having new questions. So it just kind of tracks along, but I don't know I don't know what the lifespan of a podcast is.
That was about all the questions. A few comments of people saying you are not boring. I look forward to every podcast.
Thank you.
You'll never be boring.
Yeah. Well, a shout out to one thing I would say is, there's a sea of podcasts now in the world. And I wish that there were an organizing principle in podcasts that you could go searching for independently produced podcasts, because there is an inherent they're inherently idiosyncratic in a way that I think is really beautiful. And I wish that there were a way to find them. Now they're sort of buried in the mix, but they are my tribe, and they're surprising. There's a lot of surprising podcasts out there with people still working hard in their living rooms.